I never thought I'd tell this story. Not because I'm afraid, I'm not, but because even now, months later, I can still feel the cold splash of that water on my face, like it happened this morning. The sting wasn't from the water, it was from the silence that followed. When your own boss throws a glass of water at you in front of the entire office, you don't remember what people said. You remember what they didn't. I'd been at Mason and Cole Marketing for almost 4 years. Started as a junior bookkeeper, moved up to operations coordinator, and somewhere along the way became the person who actually kept the place from collapsing. Payroll, taxes, vendor contracts, all of it landed on my desk because you're the only one I trust with numbers, my boss, David Mason, used to say. Funny thing, trust feels different when it's convenient for them. I never missed a deadline, never complained when I worked weekends to fix his mistakes. The company was small, 20-something people, but our client list was big. David loved reminding everyone how scrappy we were, how we didn't need corporate bureaucracy. That was code for no HR, no raises, no structure. The moment everything broke was quiet at first. I walked into his glass-walled office around 10 a.m., holding a folder with my performance reviews, client growth reports, and market salary benchmarks. I'd rehearsed the conversation for weeks. "David, do you have a minute?" He looked up from his phone, distracted. "Make it quick. I've got a call in 10. I wanted to discuss a salary adjustment. I've taken on new responsibilities and given the growth this year." He didn't let me finish. "You're already paid fine, aren't you? What's this about?" "I've done some research," I said, opening the folder. "Industry average for my role is around 72,000. I'm currently at 58. He leaned back, smirking. "So you read Glassdoor and think you deserve more money?" There was a beat. I kept my tone even. "No, I'm basing it on the fact that I manage vendor contracts, payroll, and financial reporting. That's 3 jobs." The air shifted. He picked up his glass, half full of sparkling water, and twirled it in his hand like he was deciding something. "You know what your problem is?" he said. "You think you're indispensable." He stood. For a second I thought he was leaving. Then without a word he flicked his wrist. The water hit me straight across the face. Cold, sharp, humiliating. It soaked my shirt, my badge lanyard, even the stack of reports I'd spent all night printing. The glass clattered to the carpet and rolled to my shoe. Someone gasped. Someone else laughed, a nervous, too-high sound that died immediately. I just stood there. My heart wasn't racing. It wasn't even anger I felt. It was clarity. Every fluorescent light above us hummed louder. The condensation from the glass dripped off my chin onto the carpet, one drop at a time. I remember watching them hit the floor, slow and deliberate, like punctuation marks at the end of a sentence I hadn't realized I'd been writing for 4 years. "You're lucky I don't fire you for this attitude," he said, wiping his hands on a napkin like he'd just finished washing something dirty. I looked him in the eye. "You can't fire me for asking a question," he scoffed. "Watch me." Behind him, through the glass, I saw people at their desks, pretending not to look, phones in hands, faces angled away. HR's representative, Melissa, stood by the copier. She met my eyes for half a second, then dropped her gaze. She didn't move. None of them did. I wiped my face with the back of my hand, smoothed my soaked shirt, and said the only thing that came to mind. "Okay." Then I turned around, walked to my desk, and sat down. I didn't pack anything, didn't cry. Instead, I opened a new document, typed 3 titles at the top, and printed them one by one. 1. Incident Report, 412. 2. Funds Movement Plan, Reconciliation Draft. 3. Client Service Disruption Notice, Template. I placed them neatly in a folder, the same folder that still smelled faintly of lemon water. As the printer spat the last page, David shouted from his office, "You're done here. Don't come back tomorrow." But I was already done, just not in the way he thought. When I left that night, the office was quiet except for the hum of the servers. My shirt was still damp where the water had soaked through. On my desk sat a single sticky note from Melissa. "Let's talk in the morning. Please don't make this worse." I smiled when I saw it, not because it comforted me, but because I already knew the morning would make everything worse for him, and better for everyone else. I didn't sleep that night, not because of shock that had already burned off, but because my brain wouldn't stop running simulations. Numbers, policies, audit chains, authorizations. Every path led to the same place. He'd buried himself long before he ever threw that glass. See? Mason and Cole wasn't some garage startup anymore. We handled payroll for 20 contractors, processed client retainers, and held funds in escrow for campaigns worth hundreds of thousands. It all looked sleek from the outside. Marble lobby, motivational posters about integrity. But I'd seen the back end, and it was duct tape and panic. The company ran two main accounts. One, operating account, the legal business balance that handled salaries, taxes, and client invoices. Two, operations reserve, a secondary fund David opened under the pretense of temporary vendor settlements. In reality, it was his personal playground. Bonuses for himself, client dinners that looked more like vacations, and consulting fees to his friends. He didn't think anyone noticed, but I did, and I had access. When he made me joint signatory 6 months ago, he said, "It's just for emergencies, in case I'm traveling or something." He'd even laughed. "Don't worry, I trust you." That trust was documented, time-stamped, and approved by the board. His signature was on every permission line. So when I got home that night, I didn't rage post or call friends. I made tea, opened my laptop, and started writing. The incident report came first. Factual, emotionless. Formatted in HR compliance language. At approximately 10:06 a.m., I requested a meeting regarding salary adjustment. Subject became verbally aggressive and threw water in my face. Witnesses present. 12 staff. Then I attached photos. I'd taken them in the office bathroom. Soaked shirt, damp badge, water droplets still clinging to my glasses. Proof of humiliation time-stamped down to the second. Next, I documented every time I'd handled his operations reserve. What transfers were legitimate, what weren't. Where the paper trail bent. It wasn't revenge, it was accountability. He'd left the keys in the ignition of his own disaster. I stayed up until 3:40 a.m., cross-referencing the vendor backlog. 7 invoices overdue, 2 tax filings unsubmitted, and 1 client refund marked hold until further notice. That refund alone was worth $42,300. Money owed back to a healthcare client who'd canceled a campaign after delivery failures. The contract clause was explicit. Refund due within 15 business days. It had been 42. David ignored every reminder. I had every email to prove it. At 7 a.m., I was back at the office. My keycard still worked. Nobody expected me to show up. Melissa from HR nearly dropped her coffee when she saw me walk in. "Oh, you're not supposed to be here," she whispered. "I'm finishing my week," I said, calm. "Policy 4.2. 2 weeks' notice is standard unless terminated in writing." She hesitated. "David said—" "David doesn't write policies," I cut in. "Legal does. You can check." She didn't argue. I sat at my desk, opened my spreadsheets, and started what I labeled final reconciliation. Every transaction, every discrepancy, every missing cent was accounted for. I made sure to log each action under my user ID, leaving a visible trail. It wasn't just documentation, it was insulation. Around 10 p.m., David's office door slammed. He'd arrived late, looking smug, probably expecting me to be gone. When he saw me typing, he stopped, mid-step. "What are you doing here?" "Working," I said without looking up. "I fired you yesterday." "Then you'll need to issue that in writing," I replied. "Until then, I'm finishing the month-end closeout. You don't want payroll penalties." He blinked. Once, twice, realizing I wasn't bluffing. Payroll penalties meant state fines, audits, maybe even frozen accounts. He muttered something about lawyers and slammed his door again. Perfect. By noon, I'd queued draft emails to our vendors. Polite, professional notices that their payments were being processed under compliance review. I CC'd HR and legal, just in case anyone wanted to lose the thread later. Then I called the one person David had underestimated completely, our bank's business liaison, Karen Lee. Karen had known me for years. We'd built the accounts together when the company was smaller. "Hey, Karen," I said, keeping my tone light. "I need to confirm signatory permissions for Operations Reserve. Last updated October 5th, correct?" She paused. "That's right. You and Mr. Mason both authorized users for payroll corrections, vendor settlements, and client refunds. And any discretionary transfers?" "No. Those require dual approval." Exactly what I needed. "I might have to trigger compliance on a few delayed items," I said. "Everything will be documented." "Of course," she replied. "You've always been by the book. I'll flag it for oversight." By the time I hung up, I'd laid the groundwork. HR's file had the incident report. Legal had my email chain. The bank had an active compliance flag that prevented David from quietly reversing anything. Before leaving, I stopped by the break room, the same table where he'd humiliated me 24 hours earlier. I looked at the half-empty water dispenser and laughed quietly. He thought the story ended there. But the thing about numbers, they always balance out eventually. And tomorrow, they'd balance him. The next morning began with an email. Short, cold, typed in the clipped rhythm of a man who thought authority could erase consequences. Subject: termination of employment. Effective. Immediately. From David Mason. To you. Your services are no longer required. Please leave company property and refrain from further communication with clients or vendors. HR will process your final paycheck within 60 days. No signature block, no HR cosign, just arrogance in plain text. I read it once, twice, then printed it. Paper was safer than pixels. Then I opened my own folder, Final Reconciliation, and added that email to the top of the stack. Because what David didn't realize was that even termination had a process. And according to that process, I wasn't just allowed to finish the accounting handover, I was obligated to. Policy 6.3.2, Employee Financial Custodian Offboarding Procedures. I wrote it myself 2 years ago. It stated that any employee with signatory or audit access must finalize outstanding reconciliations before leaving the company to prevent legal exposure. The policy required documentation, board acknowledgement, and final approval from the banking officer of record, which ironically was Karen Lee. So technically, I was doing my job by continuing. And David, in his impatience, had just tried to stop a compliance-mandated process. Perfect ammunition. I arrived at the office at 8:15 sharp, carrying my folder like a weapon wrapped in paper. My badge still beeped green. Melissa from HR was waiting near the door, looking miserable. "David said you're not supposed to be here." "Then you should probably call legal," I replied, stepping past her. "Until the board acknowledges my offboarding reconciliation, I'm still the authorized custodian for 2 active accounts." She followed, whispering, "Look, just don't make this worse, okay? He's in a mood." "I'm sure he is," I said. "So am I." When I sat at my desk, my hands didn't shake. I'd crossed the line from scared to certain. Certainty is quiet. It doesn't need adrenaline. It just moves forward, one line item at a time. I began my audit at 8:27 a.m. sharp. Every keystroke logged under my user ID. Every document exported, stamped, and saved. Payroll reconciliation, tax obligations, vendor settlements, all under categories specifically defined in the permissions David himself had approved. By 10 Hanos, the office buzzed. People whispered when I walked by. Word had spread about the water incident, the termination email, the fact that I was still sitting there, calm as gravity. David finally emerged from his office at 10:45, tie loosened, eyes bloodshot. "You've got 5 minutes to get out," he said. After I finish this reconciliation, "You're not authorized?" "Section 632, David," I interrupted, meeting his glare. "The off-boarding clause. You signed it. Twice." He froze for a moment, then barked a laugh that didn't reach his eyes. "You think quoting policy is going to save you?" "No," I said. "It's going to bury you." He opened his mouth to reply, but then my phone rang. I let it ring loud enough for the whole floor to hear. "Hello?" "Hi, this is Karen Lee from First Metropolitan Bank," came her voice, crisp and professional. "Just confirming we received your compliance notice about pending vendor settlements and tax remittances. Everything's cleared for processing. Mr. Mason's authorizations match your access." David went pale. "What notice?" he snapped. I kept my eyes on him. "The one you approved last quarter," Karen continued, oblivious to the storm brewing on my end. "Just to confirm, once these disbursements go through, the discretionary side of the operations reserve will be temporarily frozen for audit. Standard procedure." David lunged forward. "You did what?" "I followed protocol," I said quietly. He reached across the desk, snatching at my laptop. "You've got no right." "Touch me again, David," I said, voice low, steady. "You'll regret it." The room fell silent. Half the staff was watching. HR hovered near the printer, frozen mid-step. He must have realized how he looked, red-faced, hands clenched, because he dropped the laptop and stormed off. I exhaled slowly and turned back to my screen. It was 11:12 a.m. Payroll was due at noon. Every click after that felt like a drumbeat. Taxes filed, vendor settlements queued, client refund templates populated, waiting for confirmation. Each transaction fell perfectly within my permissions, each backed by a policy, a signature, a timestamp. At 11:54, I opened the folder I'd printed 2 days earlier, the 3 documents that had started it all: the incident report, the funds movement plan, the client service disruption notice. This time they weren't drafts. They were live. I uploaded the incident report to HR's compliance portal, attached the termination email and photos, CC'd the board and the external legal counsel listed in the employee handbook. Next, I finalized the funds movement plan. Every transaction justified, wages owed, taxes overdue, vendor balances. I copied Karen at the bank and HR, and finally the client notice. That one was personal. "Dear clients, due to internal leadership changes, project timelines may be temporarily delayed. Refunds for unfulfilled deliverables are being processed in accordance with contractual clauses. We appreciate your patience and continued trust." I didn't sign it with my name. I signed it, simply. Operations Department. At 12 noon, exactly, I hit send all. That single click was quieter than the sound of that glass hitting the floor days before, but it carried more weight. By the time David realized what had happened, it would already be too late. The wheels of compliance turn slowly, but they crush everything in their path once they start moving, and I'd just set them rolling straight toward him. The next 48 hours unfolded like a symphony of controlled chaos, the kind where every note was calculated months before anyone realized a song was playing. I arrived at the office early again, before sunrise. The building was still dark, the hum of the servers the only sound. There's something holy about an empty office. No noise, no pretending, just truth humming in the circuits. I brewed coffee, logged in, and opened the bank portal. My hands didn't shake, not once. Every step was authorized, every number cross-referenced, every transfer justified under the policy David himself had written. Account, Mason and Cole, operations reserve balance, $250,000, $183.09. That was the slush fund, the one he called for emergencies, the same one that paid for his golf weekends and team retreats in Capo, the same account where he quietly parked client retainers when he didn't want to report revenue yet. I didn't touch a cent that wasn't documented. No anger, no thrill, just precision. First transfer, $27,100, payroll correction. Unpaid overtime for the design team, 3 months overdue. State law said interest accrued daily. I attached the payroll summaries, timestamps, and timesheets, then sent the confirmation to the CPA. Second, 11/7/42s, employer tax withholding, filed through the state's automated system. I watched the status change from delinquent to filed and paid. Third, $42,300, client refund, healthcare account. That one felt poetic. The same refund David refused to process for weeks, claiming cash flow optimization. I clicked submit and CC'd both the client and legal. Their auto response pinged back almost instantly. Received. Thank you for your integrity. Integrity. I almost laughed. By 10 $200,000 had moved. All visible, all legitimate, every cent within the narrow definition of my permissions. The balance on the screen read $49,983.29. I stared at that number for a long second, then opened my final batch. $14,000. Vendor settlement, Media Hub, $9,100. Print supply account, $8,200. Freelancer disbursement, 3 contractors, $18,683.29. Payroll, adjustment, back pay, final settlement. That last transfer was mine, legally, logged, signed, backed by the state's Wage Act. It wasn't revenge money. It was everything the company owed me. Unpaid overtime, late wages, and the penalty the law demanded. I typed a note in the ledger. Final authorized transfer as per section 6.3.2, custodian settlement and offboarding compliance. Then I hit confirm. The balance dropped to $0. I didn't smile. Not yet. I just exhaled, slow and even, and printed every confirmation, every line item, every receipt. The folder grew thick, heavy, a physical timeline of his downfall. At 10:46 a.m., the office door banged open. David stormed in like a thunderhead in a suit, face red, phone in hand. "What the hell did you do?" I didn't look up. "Perform my duties. You emptied the account. I reconciled outstanding liabilities. Payroll, vendors, taxes, all documented." He slammed his phone on the desk. "You think you can just—" "I didn't think, David," I said, finally looking at him. "I followed the exact procedures you signed. Twice." He laughed. Short, sharp, panicked. "You just committed corporate theft." "Actually," I said, turning the monitor toward him, "I committed corporate compliance." On the screen, the account summary blinked under the bank compliance lock symbol. A small padlock icon Karen had triggered automatically after the final transfer. He froze. "What's that?" "Fraud prevention. Standard procedure when funds in a discretionary reserve are fully reconciled. The bank will review all transactions and freeze discretionary access until cleared. You called the bank?" "I reported irregularities," I corrected, which I'm required to do when an executive's transactions lack proper expense codes. It's all in the packet I sent to legal. "You," he pointed at me, voice cracking, "you don't understand what you've done." "I understand exactly what I've done," I said, standing. "I've cleaned your mess. You're welcome." He lunged again, like he might grab the folder, but Melissa appeared behind him, pale and wide-eyed. "David, stop," she said. "The board's on line 1. He turned. "What board?" "The board that just got an alert from the bank, and from the CPA, and from every client you refused to refund." He went still, his jaw working silently. I picked up my folder and slung my bag over my shoulder. "I'll leave my keycard at the front desk," I said. "You're finished," he shouted after me. "I'll ruin you." I paused at the door. "You already did," I said quietly, "just not in the way you planned." Then I walked out. The elevator ride down was silent. The folder sat heavy against my arm, full of every receipt, every policy, every choice he'd made to value pride over people. When I stepped outside, the sunlight hit like a verdict. My phone buzzed, a message from Karen. "All transfers verified. Compliance freeze confirmed. You're clear. You did the right thing." I stared at it for a while. Did the right thing? Maybe. Or maybe I just gave cause and effect a gentle push. Either way, it was done. The account was empty. The books were clean. And for the first time in 4 years, so was my conscience. The morning after I left felt wrong in the best possible way. No alarm, no dread, just sunlight spilling through my blinds and the kind of silence that doesn't demand anything from you. But even in that quiet, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. First, a text from Melissa. "You might want to check the news." Then a second from an unknown number. "Thank you for what you did. Jay." I sat up, opened my laptop, and typed Mason and Cole Marketing into the search bar. The first headline hit like a slow exhale. Boutique agency under investigation after payroll and tax discrepancies surface. Below it, sources confirm former operations coordinator reported irregularities before departure. They didn't name me, but they didn't have to. By noon, the entire industry Slack was buzzing. Vendors were posting screenshots of their cleared invoices with captions like, "Finally paid, whoever you are. Bless you." Freelancers I hadn't even met were tweeting thank yous, tagging the company with receipts that spoke louder than any revenge could. But the one that broke the internet came from the healthcare client. They posted the refund confirmation email, the one I'd sent, with the caption, "Integrity is rare in business. We got ours back, thanks to one brave employee." And below it, a 10-second clip from the office's internal security footage. It showed David, standing in his glass office, throwing the water, the glass hitting the carpet, me standing still, no sound, just a slow-motion humiliation broadcast to thousands of people who didn't even know my name, but knew exactly who I was in that moment. I didn't leak it. Someone else did. Probably one of the designers. Maybe Melissa. It didn't matter. The clip spread across LinkedIn, Reddit, and business news blogs faster than any ad campaign Mason and Cole ever launched. The comments section was brutal. Classic narcissistic leadership. Imagine being this fragile over a raise. Good for her. Him. Perfect execution. David's reputation evaporated overnight. By the second day, half the clients had suspended contracts pending investigation. The board called an emergency meeting. HR was grilled about why they'd ignored a written assault report. The CPA confirmed the account freeze, and the bank backed every one of my transfers as authorized and compliant. That phrase, authorized and compliant, became the nail in David's coffin. He tried to frame it as theft. He called the police. But the officer who took the report simply asked, "Did they profit personally?" David sputtered. "They moved $250,000. To whom? Vendors, payroll, taxes, refunds." The officer blinked. "So they paid your debts?" David went red. "You don't understand." "No," the officer said, closing the notepad. "I think I do." The report never made it past intake. The district attorney's office declined to pursue. No criminal intent. All documented. Meanwhile, the board launched their own audit. Every misuse of company funds, every executive dinner that looked suspiciously like a vacation, every marketing expense that traced back to his personal credit card, all of it surfaced. By week's end, they issued a statement. Effective immediately, David Mason has been suspended pending investigation. The company will undergo leadership restructuring to restore compliance and trust. It hit the trade publications within the hour. And just like that, Mason and Cole, his empire of ego and manipulation, cracked wide open. Melissa called that night. Her voice was trembling, half with relief, half with guilt. "They're cleaning house," she said. "Legal stepping in. The board wants to reach out. They're saying you saved the company." "I didn't save it," I said quietly. "I just stopped it from sinking on everyone else." She was silent for a moment, then said, "You know, that video, it wasn't me." I figured. But whoever leaked it, it was the right thing. People saw who he really was. "Yeah?" I said, staring at my reflection in the window. "They did." The next day, I got an email from Karen at the bank. Subject: Final update, Mason and Cole case file. Compliance review concluded, all transactions approved under proper authorization. No irregularities found. Mr. Mason's discretionary privileges revoked, pending board reauthorization. On a personal note, you handled this with extraordinary professionalism. Karen Lee. I read that line 3 times. Extraordinary professionalism. That's what doing the right thing sounds like on paper. Neat, sterile, bloodless. But in real life, it's messier. It costs you something. Sometimes, everything. Still, as I closed the laptop that night, I realized something. For 4 years, I'd been the one keeping their system running. Now, I was the one who finally let it stop. And it felt good. Not loud, not triumphant, just right. David Mason's name was trending for all the wrong reasons. The board was scrambling to contain the fire. The company was in pieces. But the people, the ones who'd been underpaid, overlooked, overworked, they were free. And for the first time, I didn't owe anyone anything. It's strange, the way peace arrives. You expect a rush, fireworks, vindication, some cinematic moment where everything finally feels worth it. But in the real world, peace doesn't announce itself. It just shows up quietly one morning and sits beside you like an old friend you almost forgot existed. 3 weeks after the fallout, Mason and Cole was still burning. I watched it from afar. New headlines, new leadership, board statements dressed up as apologies. The company changed its logo, rebranded its website, tried to bury the scandal under fresh colors and softer language. But nothing hides rot that deep. They called me once. The new interim CEO, a board member who'd stepped in to stabilize things, left a voicemail. Calm, measured, corporate. We'd like to discuss a potential consulting role in compliance restructuring. You know the systems better than anyone. We'd like to make things right. I listened twice, then deleted it. I wasn't angry. I was done. Instead, I met with a recruiter from a competitor, Hendricks and Vale, a firm I'd admired quietly for years. They knew the whole story, of course. Everyone did. But they didn't flinch. Their operations director, a woman named Renee, just smiled across the table. You don't need to prove anything, she said. We've seen the paperwork. You didn't destroy a company. You disinfected one. The offer came a week later. A senior compliance manager role, full benefits, and a salary that made my old one look like an insult. I signed the contract without hesitation. On my first day, the office felt different, brighter somehow. No performative pep talks, no brittle smiles masking chaos, just quiet competence, the kind that doesn't need applause to exist. My new badge had my name printed cleanly, without the faint coffee stain that haunted the old one. When I hung it around my neck, it felt like reclaiming something I hadn't realized I'd lost. Dignity. That evening, after everyone left, I sat alone at my new desk. Real wood, not laminate, and unpacked the last box I'd kept sealed since leaving Mason and Cole. Inside, one coffee mug, one photo of the old team before things turned ugly, and that faded folder thick with receipts and signatures. I flipped through it slowly, each page a reminder of how far I'd come. The incident report, the funds movement plan, the client notice, all stamped, official, closed. Justice in black ink. Then, without ceremony, I slid them into the shredder. The sound was low, mechanical, final. I kept only one thing, the sticky note from Melissa. Please don't make this worse. It wasn't a warning anymore. It was proof that sometimes making it worse for the wrong person is the only way to make it better for everyone else. When I left the building that night, the air smelled like rain. I didn't rush. I just stood there, breathing it in, remembering the sting of that first splash of water. How cold it had been, how heavy the silence afterward had felt. Well, now the silence was different. Not humiliation, freedom. In my pocket, my phone buzzed again, a notification from LinkedIn. A message request. From Karen Lee. Congratulations on the new role. You earned every bit of it, and for what it's worth, you restored my faith in how this job should work. I smiled and typed back, "Thank you, Karen. You taught me that rules aren't there to protect power. They're there to protect people." As I hit send, the rain started. Soft, steady, cleansing. Across town, Mason and Cole's old building stood in the dark, its glass windows reflecting nothing but the city lights. Somewhere inside, another team was trying to rebuild what was left. I didn't hate them for it. I hoped they succeeded. But that story wasn't mine anymore. Mine ended the moment I closed that account and walked away. It wasn't vengeance. It wasn't even justice. It was balance. The kind that doesn't need applause. Just quiet proof that the numbers finally add up. I walked home in the rain, hands in my pockets, head clear, and for the first time in 4 years, no weight pressed between my shoulders. Behind me, a company's silence. Ahead of me, my own beginning,